untuk beberapa syarikat daripada Jepun, Singapura untuk menyimpankan karbon di Sarawak. Kita ada tempat CCUS reservoir, dan karbon ini ada juga negara they have to transfer it kepada Sarawak. Umpamanya daripada Jepun, macam syarikat Sumitomo, dia hendak nyimpankan karbonnya di perairan Sarawak, but there is no regulatory framework macam mana nak membawakan karbon di sini. Dan kita ada undang-undang kita sendiri, CCUS, kita gunakan undang-undang kita, tetapi ia mestilah ada coordination dengan kerajaan persekutuan. Kerana kita telah menerima banyak permohonan untuk menyimpankan karbon.
Such interest, he adds, creates opportunities in the new economy, which go hand in hand with Sarawak's aspiration to become the region's largest carbon storage hub.
Tensions in West Asia are reaching a fever pitch tonight as US President Donald Trump threatens to crush Iran's civilian infrastructure unless Tehran returns to the negotiating table. With US airstrikes now hitting strategic nuclear, oil and port targets, Iran is vowing to keep the vital Strait of Hormuz closed, sparking major alarms across global energy markets. Here's the latest with Handy Goy.
Right, thank you, Lorenzo. Now on to the latest. US President Donald Trump has threatened to expand military strikes on Iran next week to include power plants and bridges unless Tehran agrees to negotiations as tensions over the Strait of Hormuz continue to mount.
And then next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants, next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
Trump made similar remarks in March when he warned that Iran's power stations and freshwater facilities could be destroyed if Tehran failed to agree to peace terms. Targeting civilian infrastructure such as power and water facilities would violate international humanitarian law and could constitute a war crime. His comments came as US forces carried out a fourth consecutive day of strikes on Iran and reimposed a naval blockade on Iranian ports along the Strait of Hormuz. US Central Command said the latest operations were aimed at degrading Iranian capabilities used to attack commercial shipping in the strategic waterway, where Tehran has repeatedly targeted civilian vessels. Now, as Washington signals further military action, Iranian authorities say fresh US strikes have hit several strategically important locations across the country. Officials said Tuesday's attacks struck the port of Bushehr, home to Iran's only civilian nuclear power plant, as well as an area near the border with Kuwait and Iraq. Authorities also reported strikes on Abadan, home to the Middle East's oldest oil refinery, and the nearby port city of Mashhad. Meanwhile, Iranian state television reported explosions near Bandar Abbas and on Qisham Island, both located close to the Strait of Hormuz. Alongside its military campaign, the US has expanded economic pressure on Tehran by imposing new sanctions targeting Iran's oil and cryptocurrency sectors. The US Treasury Department announced fresh measures against the petroleum shipping network linked to Mohammed Hossein Shamkhani. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also said authorities had frozen $130 million in digital assets tied to Iran's central bank, targeting a financial channel that has grown increasingly active since the conflict began. The sanctions follow 4 straight days of US strikes and the reimposition of the naval blockade, while the International Maritime Organization says Iran has continued targeting ships in the Strait of Hormuz. The Treasury said the latest measures target more than 50 individuals, entities and vessels allegedly supporting Iran's oil exports, bringing the total number of sanctions under the Shamkhani network to more than 200. As network and military pressure intensifies, Iran's Revolutionary Guards IRGC said the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed until US ends what they describe as acts of aggression. The guards also warned that additional regional oil and gas export routes serving US and allied interests could become targets if the conflict continues. However, they did not specify which routes might be affected, but reiterated that energy exports from the region would either remain open for everyone or no one at all. Meanwhile, Israel has also raised its warning to Tehran, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pledging a far more forceful response to any future Iranian attack.
לא, אני אגיד את זה למנהיגי איראן. אל תבנו על כך שיהיה שקט אם תתקפו אותנו. אל תבנו על כך שיהיה שידור חוזר. כי זה לא יהיה שידור חוזר. הוא היה מספיק עוצמתי. זה יהיה שידור אחר, עוצמתי הרבה יותר. נגמרו הימים שמישהו פוגע בנו ואנחנו לא מכים אותו מכה אחת אפיים. עשינו את זה לציר הרשע באיראן ונמשיך לעשות זאת לכל מי שיפגע בנו.
Despite the escalating conflict, Asian markets moved higher on Wednesday, led by gains in Seoul after softer than expected US inflation eased concerns over another interest rate hike. Investors' sentiment was also supported by strong Wall Street earnings and President Trump's reversal on earlier threats to impose levies on cargo moving through the Strait of Hormuz. However, oil prices continued climbing as crude oil prices have risen by more than 10% since fighting intensified last week. Meanwhile, U.S. consumer prices increased 3.5% last month, below market expectations and down from May's 4.2% reading, helped by lower energy costs following the brief reopening of the Strait of Hormuz during the earlier ceasefire. That is all I have for you tonight. Back to you, Lorenzo.
The narrative Israel has been pushing to justify the genocide it is committing in Palestine is failing big time. Yet they continue to kill, slaughtering innocent lives under the guise of self-defense. Speaking against this apartheid should not just be a part of a trend, but a consistent narrative. Courtesy of RT International and Al Jazeera Plus, today we pay tribute to Palestinian babies whose lives were taken away before they could even fully open their eyes.
We coordinated with the Palestinian Red Crescent to send us an ambulance. They dispatched one, but it was delayed. We called again to ask where they were, and they told us they were at the checkpoint. The army was refusing to let them pass, and the gate was closed. So we took the child down to them. The vehicle was waiting to pass through, the child was inside, but they did not allow it to enter. We tried to convince them to let the ambulance in. After some time, they allowed the child through, but unfortunately by then the child had already died.
We face a lot of suffering because of the closure of the gates. This causes delays for us and for the patients. We are often targeted by the occupation forces. On some days they fire tear gas at us. Because of the gates, we are forced to go around and use a rough road. That can take up to an hour. This case is like many others, with delays and obstructions affecting the ambulances. In the town of Deir Ammar, there is a gate that is constantly closed. We are also talking about hundreds of gates spread across the West Bank. These were installed by the occupation forces. All of this affects the work of ambulance crews in reaching emergency cases, as happened with the infant.
Now back in Malaysia, the first phase of the cutting-edge hydrogen hub powering Sarawak's new autonomous rapid transit ART system is on track to be completed by the end of this year. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim announced the milestone on Facebook today following the first National Energy Council meeting of 2026 at Parliament.
The meeting was attended by Deputy Prime Minister Dato' Amar Fadilah Yusof, Sarawak Premier Dato' Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Joritun Openg, and federal cabinet ministers. Anwar notes that public transport electrification projects are progressing as scheduled, highlighted by the operation of 250 electric buses and an 800-kilometer rail network coverage. The Prime Minister explains that this development underpins government efforts to fortify the National Energy Transition Agenda via the National Energy Transition Roadmap, or NETR. Anwar says that as of last December, Malaysia's installed renewable energy capacity climbed to 31%, aligning with the nation's directive to reduce coal dependency. The effort is reinforced by the Corporate Renewable Energy Supply Scheme, or CRES, which now incorporates battery energy storage systems. In the transportation sector, the B15 biodiesel rollout continues to drive alternative fuel adoption, to be strengthened by the Petronas Biofuel Hub in Pengerang.
Get all the updates you need all in one app. TVS Inspire brings you live updates on events, news and programs. Available now on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. TVS Inspire on your screen, anytime, anywhere. Those were the updates on TVS Nightline. I'm Lorenzo Isaac. Thank you all for watching and have a good night.